Have you ever lost a game in 17 moves or less? Don't worry, because this is something that can happen even to someone who is preparing for a World Championship match. Please let me know in the comments which was your shortest loss in a game, because today we're going to look at the shortest decisive game played over the board in a World Championship match. It was in 2012 in Moscow when defending champion Vishwanathan Anand from India played against Boris Gelfand from Israel. It was a very tough match. Even though Anand was the favorite to win the match, Boris Gelfand won the first decisive game in the 7th game of the match. So after that, on the 8th game, Vishy Anand was out for blood and played a very sharp opening idea. This allowed him to tie the match, and later on he would win the match, keeping his title in the rapid tiebreaks. So after d4, Gelfand played the move knight to f6, and after c4 and g6. So far this is very standard. But here, Anand played the move f3, which at first sight might look like a very weird move because this square is normally a square to develop a knight. And this is a move that I would tell you not to play unless you have prepared it, because it is definitely not a natural move. But let's look at the other alternatives before. So here in this position, by far the most common move is knight to c3, planning to play the move e4, where white gets full control of the center. And in this position, black can allow white to do that by going bishop to g7. That would lead the game into the king's Indian defense. But in this match, Gelfand was playing the move d5, which is the Grunfeld defense. Black doesn't want to allow white to play e4 at once, and the point is that after capturing and then playing the move e4, here black trades knights and then goes bishop to g7, and even though here white gets very good control of the center, black has the idea to counterattack the center with c5 and knight to c6. So this is by far the most common way on which the game would develop if black wanted to play the Grunfeld defense. But f3 is an interesting way to avoid this main line. And Gelfand had been preparing very well against the main line, that's why here Anand tried something different. And here in this position, black could play the move bishop to e7, and then after e4 we get a king's Indian defense. But here the most common reaction if black wants to play the Grunfeld defense is to go d5. And the point is that after capturing and knight takes, here after the move e4, black doesn't have this idea of taking the knight on c3. And here in this position, the knight normally goes back to b6, because black wants to get quick counterplay against the pawn on d4. And here after a move like knight to c3 and bishop to d7, this is quite playable for black. Now black will try to counterattack the center with e5. But probably Gelfand was afraid that Anand had some very strong preparation against this line. So as we can see, there are many subtle points in this position. And besides the move d5, if black wants to counterattack the center straight away, c5 is the other alternative, which was played by Gelfand. Here, white's main idea is to go d5. White wants to get a strong center. Taking on c5 is actually not very good for white because black can get the pawn back easily. For example, after queen to a5, we get this fork, and black is doing perfectly fine. So here after the move c5, white played the move d5, and here after d6 and e4, black played bishop to g7. So we see that we get this imbalance where black is developing more quickly, but white gets this very strong center, which is very well supported by white's pawns. And here white played the move knight to e2, which might not look like the most natural move, just blocking the bishop. Knight to c3 is definitely more natural, and then going bishop to g5. But probably here white wanted to prepare something different in order to drive the game into an unknown territory for black. So knight to e2 was played, and after black castled, here white played the move knight e to c3, so this knight is coming to c3, and this knight keeps the option to go either to d2 or to a3, as we'll see later. And in this position, black played a move which I think was unnecessary, which is the move knight to h5. So here the most standard way to counterattack white's center in these positions are by going e6 and a6. So here after e6, white will normally play bishop to g5, and here the game might continue h6, and here white normally goes back to e3. This is a common maneuver in order to provoke h6 and then go queen to d2, and here after black trades on d5 and pawn takes, a6 is a very typical idea, planning to go b5, which white normally tries to avoid, and then the game might continue knight b to d7, and we get this position on which maybe white gets a slight advantage by having more space on the center, but this is definitely a position that can be played for black. In this position, the knight might develop to a3 and then go to c4 or even to d2, and this was probably the most natural way on which the game might continue. But in this position, Gelfand played the move knight to h5, which is a sharp move, which I think was unnecessary because Gelfand was leading the match, so the onus was on Anand to win the game. And here in this position, White could even play the move g4, but the idea is to provoke this move and then try to get counterplay with f5 after moving the knight. This was perfectly playable, but Anand decided to play the move bishop to g5, which as we saw is a typical idea in the position. And here again in this position, Gelfand played a somewhat strange move and went bishop to f6. I think that f5 was consistent with Black's previous move. And in this position, if White captures on f5, Black can capture even with the rook, since it would attack the bishop, maybe even with the pawn, or even with the bishop, because after a move like g4, even though we get a fork, something similar will happen in the game. Black has this idea of taking on b1, so Black is not losing material here. But here Black played bishop to f6, and here Anand traded on f6, and Black's idea was to capture with the pawn, and then trying to go f5. This is again playable for Black, maybe interesting, but probably unnecessary if Black is leading the match. And here in this position, White played queen to d2, with the idea to go g4, and the queen on d2 is now eyeing the f4 square, so after g4, the knight would have to go back. And here, Gelfand played the move f5, which is consistent with the previous move, and here White captured on f5. In this position, the only serious move is to take with the bishop. Taking with the pawn would simply ruin Black's pawn structure. So after bishop takes, here White played the move g4, and we get this very sharp position where both sides have to be very accurate. Here Black played the move rook to e8. After queen to h4, White would still play the move king to d1, so after rook to e8, White's idea is to go king to d1, so White is not going to castle in this position. And here now, Black's only way to avoid losing material is to take the knight on b1, and here after rook takes. Here in this position, Black could have moved the knight, for example, to f6, and even though White didn't castle, White will do it in an artificial way, or White would castle by hand, as we say in chess, by going king to c2, and then after bishop to e2 or bishop to d3, the rooks are going to be connected. For example, knight b to d7 and bishop to e2. This position is actually quite playable for White because the king is very safe here. White has already connected the rooks, and White might even have ideas to go h4 and h5, and Black might try to get counterplay with a6 and b5. So we get a position that reminds us of opposite side castling, where both sides would try to attack each other. But after rook takes b1, Gelfand insisting with this idea of going for a fight and play the move queen to f6. So just leaving the knight undefended, and counterattacking is normally a great way to play when you have to defend, but in this particular position, there was a very subtle detail that Gelfand missed, which is that after pawn takes knight and queen takes, it seems that Black is doing perfectly fine because now we get this fork and Black is going to win material. After king to c2 and queen takes, and this position would actually be even winning for Black if it was not for the very nice move queen to f2. So this is just a very quiet move, very easy to miss. And in this position actually Gelfand resigned. Amazingly, Black's queen is going to be trapped, so the queen doesn't have any square to go. And here White will continue with a move like bishop to d3 or bishop to h3, and Black will have to give the queen for the rook. There was one way to save the queen by going knight to c6, planning to go knight to d4, but here White would simply take, and after queen takes, even though Black gets a rook for two minor pieces, Black is positionally busted. For example, after bishop to d3, White will continue with rook to f1 and then go knight to d5, and White's pieces are just way too active, and for a player of Gelfand's caliber, this position is already hopeless, so he decided to resign after queen to f2. So this was the critical point where Black went queen to f6, instead Black had to move the knight. So this was a 17 move game, but still quite interesting, and it was decided with this one mistake, queen to f6, and the game was short, but still very sharp and interesting. So I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you want to know more about shocking mistakes made by top players, you might want to check this video on the right. Thanks for watching, and bye for now!